What's up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. This right here is my 2015 Hyundai Genesis Coupe. Now with it being in 2015 and with the 2.0T being discontinued in 2014, this is obviously a 3.8, but it's not just any 3.8, it's got a Remnant Performance turbo kit on it. As you guys would have seen in the last video, when we were doing the transmission mount installation on this car, I had a special little box over here from the guys over at Remnant Performance. So if you would have seen from a previous video, this car, we did modify the crossover pipe and add a second wastegate. So we have dual 44mm wastegates on this build. And at the time I had one On3 Performance wastegate, which was the original one with this kit, and one Remnant Performance branded wastegate. So using those two in tandem, I went out and I did a bunch of different testing with different springs. I've got all sorts of springs for the Remnant gate. I have now all sorts of springs for the On3 gate. And while the setup did work, it was not exactly how it should be. So I could effectively control boost with the two different style wastegates, but it was almost like they weren't really operating in tandem, which you would kind of expect considering that they are two completely different style wastegates. So what I mean by that is we had tested the On3 gate with the 6-pound spring that I purchased for it, and with the 6-pound spring, no matter what gate or what spring I had in the Remnant gate, I would hit a certain peak boost, and then as I went up through the RPMs, the boost would sort of drop off. So I could increase the spring rate on the Remnant gate, and it would make more peak boost, but it would still have that sort of drop off as I went higher through the RPMs towards redline. So logically, you would say, okay, well, let's up the spring pressure on the On3 gate and try to eliminate that. So when I went from a 6-pound spring to the next size up, which is an 8-pound spring, it did eliminate this drop off and boost as you went through the RPMs. However, now it was almost like the On3 gate was doing less to contribute to the boost control. So it's almost like the ratio of the 8-pound spring with whatever spring I had in the Remnant gate at the time, it was now relying more on the Remnant gate, which is only seeing 3 of the 6 cylinders exhaust flow. So in turn, I would make a certain amount of boost, and then as I went to the RPMs, because the other gate wasn't functioning as it should, then I would start to rise in boost. So I was kind of limited. I wasn't the end of the world for me to have a situation where, I peak out at 11 or 12 pounds of boost and then it drops off to 10, 9 pounds. But ideally, you should want it to make a certain amount of peak boost, hold that peak boost to redline, everything functions as it should. So I was really testing, because I already had the Remnant gate and the On3 gate, seeing whether I could make it work before I went out and I tried to purchase a gate that was identical to one of those two. Well, I decided that it's time to go ahead and move on from the On3 Performance wastegate. So I picked up another 44mm Remnant Performance wastegate. So today we're going to be installing this to replace the On3, and hopefully this will get to a position where both wastegates are functioning, operating identically at the same time. So out of the box, this is all what comes with the Remnant Performance wastegate. You get the clamps for what you would weld onto the exhaust, and then for a dump tube, you've got the V-bands there. Here you get the fire ring to seat on the piston of the wastegate. There were some fittings in here that I've already went ahead and installed on here. So we've got a block off port there, another one on the end here, and then obviously your banjo bolt for your boost reference line to the bottom of the gate. Then on the top, you've also got a block off port, and then since I'm running an electronic boost controller, we've got another banjo bolt on top. Other than that, there's some extra springs that come in the box. We've got the small one, which is a 2.9 pound spring. And we've got this larger one, which is a 4.35 pound spring. Already loaded inside of here is a 5.8 pound spring. I did take this apart just to verify everything is as expected. And these should be able to be thrown in with now my growing supply of wastegate springs. So I've now got three 2.9 pound springs. These two are the Remnant ones. This green one is actually a tile, which is, you know, interchangeable, but tile 2.9 pound spring. We've got these two Remnant 4.35s. This red one is a tile 4.35, and then now 5.8 in both of them. So I've got quite a good amount of springs to be able to test around with and get the exact boost reference that I want. These springs are from the On3 gate. So we'll go ahead and get started with removing the On3 gate. Peep the borescope that I just picked up. I think it's sweet. Guys, so with the car up in the air, you can more clearly see that On3 Performance wastegate that we're going to be swapping out with the Remnant deal today. So we'll need to grab some Allen keys, a 10mm, of course there's always a 10mm needed, and that's mostly it. And we should be able to swap over this dump tube, the wastegate lines there, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use these clamps or the ones that came with the gate, so we'll have to see which one works better. Let's go ahead and get this thing off. All right, guys, we've got that wastegate off. Let's go ahead and transfer the dump tube onto the Remnant gate and get these clamps and the fire ring and everything ready to put back in the car. All right, guys, got the dump tube transferred over. We are going to be using the Remnant Performance clamps. These ones are not as tight as these ones can get, so we'll go ahead and throw all this in the box for the Remnant one, just so I keep up with it, and put this on the car. All right. So this should be oriented in the correct manner. These things can be a bit difficult because you do have this fire ring that you have to compress the valve slightly when you're installing the clamp. So the valve, like if I just have it stagnant like this won't go on. So you have to press in. And depending on how stiff your spring is, that can be a more or less difficult task. But with this being a 5.8 pound spring, it should be pretty easy. My thing ready. It wouldn't be too bad. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now we'll get that at the angle I want. Make sure this is tight. Now, it's not going nowhere. Still do need to tighten up the dump tube though, and put the wastegate lines on. and that one. All right, those are at a pretty good angle. That one could probably go down a little bit. So let's see if I can get that to sit like that. Okie dokie. Get these lines on. This one could have been angled a little bit more towards me, but that's fine. This way it's as far as possible away from any sort of heat. I'm not sure how much I like that. I might actually move it back up.
Like that. Gets it away from that clamp.
Sweet. Well guys, got the wastegate installed. Looking nice. Matching the other remnant gate over on the other side there. Wasn't too bad of a swap over. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with it at this point, but went together nicely. Lines are routed pretty smoothly where I shouldn't have to worry about any heat or issues with them. So we'll go ahead and put this thing back on the ground. Well, pretty simple install, swap out of wastegate. Now, really the work has just begun because all the data that I have on the 2-gate setup for this car is now really invalidated. So we'll need to start over once again. Like I said, we've got both gates with 5.8 pound springs. So hopefully that should net us around 6 or 7 pounds of boost to begin with, and then see how much we can get with the boost controller. And if needed, we can always add some more springs, increase it up to 7 1/4, something like that, to get us to the target boost levels that we want. So more to come on testing for this car. But guys, that's pretty much gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and saw a little more about the turbo kit on this car and how, you know, it's been modified to accept the dual wastegates, and then just in general removal and installation of the Remnant Performance wastegate for the Genesis Coupe 3.8 turbo kit. So take care and have a great day.